think we'll just give this maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. I see some people still grabbing coffee. If you have not grabbed coffee or a cookie or a muffin in the back, feel free. So welcome, everyone. We will start on time. I know there'll be a few stragglers. It is Monday, Super Bowl Monday. Is that what we're calling it now? The day after, so to speak. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the Stimson Center for our first public Block Speak event, and to have Philippe Thevoz from SICPA here. I'm Cindy Vestergaard. I'm the director of the Blockchain and Practice program here at the Stimson Center. I'm also the director of the Nuclear Safeguards program. The Blockchain and Practice program is just a few months new. We actually had an initiative for 2 years where we're studying it, looking at it. We're still studying and looking at it, but now it's officially a program here at the Stimson Center, which we're very excited about as we move forward in looking at ways in which DLT, distributed ledger technology, which is blockchain is a subset of, looking at how DLT can be utilized to help create greater efficiencies, greater streamlining within international security specifically. So looking at nuclear safeguards, nuclear security, and even the peaceful trade of dual-use chemicals. So this is where we're starting. Everything's very new, as you know, even with DLT writ large. But Philippe is here to talk to us about specifically the GuardTime KSI platform. And I think that is a platform that not many are aware of in the United States. It is certainly within Europe. And I'm not going to tell you any more of the details. Of course, Philippe will do that. Philippe is the Vice President for eGovernment systems at SICPA. SICPA stands for nothing. Okay, SICPA. He works for SICPA. Been there for 3 years now, but you have over 30 years in digital transformation. And so I'm just going to turn the floor to you right away, and I will sit over here, and then we'll come back and have more of a fireside chat after he's done. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with you to talk about how blockchain can help in digital integrity and apply to the type of questions that you are interested in. This means nuclear fuel, critical chemicals, strategic goods. And where I'm coming from SICPA, and SICPA, in fact, you are touching SICPA product every day because we are manufacturing security inks to secure banknotes. The US dollar, the Swiss francs, the euro, the yuan, the rupee, they are all secured with some of our inks to make them very difficult to counterfeit. And thus, we are used to enable trust in the material world. But now, as governments are going more and more in the digital, it's natural for us to help government also in some of their critical mission in the digital. And this is my responsibility here. So just a few examples, how can we fight against fraud and counterfeit in different domains, about provenance, about certificates, about processes, about signatures. I will give you some insight. And the whole question when we go to digital is when we have a piece of paper with a signature, with a seal, we can always refer to this piece of paper to which would justify that you are the owner of a house, for instance. But if you move to the digital, then it's a little bit more scary because it's very easy to counterfeit a PDF file or whatever digital document. So how to make such that you are confident that the ownership of your house, for instance, or this certificate, which is only digital, is really then genuine and has not been counterfeited. So I want to focus on very practical applications that you could use in your domain. Of course, I did not use directly application in your domains, but you will know how to translate that. And a first practical application is data integrity and provenance. So typically, if I have a document here, a picture of this construction work, I want to make sure that this is the right one and this has been signed by the right person, because this could be a proof that things has been well done or not in this construction work. I want also to be able to guarantee the traceability, and traceability of nuclear fuel is one example, but there are a lot of other things where traceability is important. And I will finish by secure certificate. At some points you need to guarantee to someone else something, and you have to issue a certificate that this is the right thing or whatever. So we'll go through that. And for that, as Cindy said, we are the foundational blockchain that we are using here is the one that is born in Estonia, which is a small country south of Finland and west of Russia, where in fact everything is secured by this blockchain. Why? Because in 2007 they had a very severe cyber attack from their eastern neighbor. And as everything was digital, they have to say, hey, we need to do something to protect ourselves. And since then, all their databases, all the transactions between their databases are secured through this KSI blockchain that is symbolized by this red tape here. So millions of transactions, terabytes of data are secured every single second on this KSI blockchain since 2008. And why this is a document from the Estonian government where they say why did they choose blockchain and why this blockchain for this application. They wanted to have a unique trust anchor which could enable trust in all the government data and guarantee or enforce data integrity, and something which could be totally scalable to secure a huge number of transactions or of documents, with guaranteeing also the privacy and being fully interoperable. And in fact, for that, they had a different approach to blockchain, and I will use to introduce it a metaphor or an example. I was last year at this annual Congress in Geneva, and I said, how can I prove in 10 years or 20 years from now that I wrote this following statement on that day? And everybody could do it. We could do it together here without any problem. How would you do it? Any idea? You just publish it into a newspaper, into a large enough newspaper. This means that the newspaper is acting as an immutable distributed ledger. What does it mean? It means if you want to propagate another version of the truth, what should you do? You should collect all and find all the copies of this issue of the newspaper and convince their owner to substitute their copies by your copy, which would say something else. This is obviously very difficult or even impossible because you don't know where they are, okay? And even if you could find, why would people accept to substitute? Typically, Library of Congress has a copy of this newspaper. Why they would accept to substitute their copy by yours, okay? And of course, this is not very private. So you don't want to publish this into the newspaper, but you will publish what we call a hash. A hash is nothing else than a fingerprint of a digital document. And this type of public domain mathematical application has the following characteristic, is that this is a one-way function. This means from a hash, from my fingerprint, you cannot rebuild me. But from my fingerprint, you can identify me in a unique way and undisputable way here. This is the same for mathematical hash. So if you publish this mathematical hash here in the newspaper and you keep this text in your pocket without releasing it, you will be able to make the link between the two and prove that indeed this text has been this statement has been made at this date over here. We call that timestamping. Of course, this is not very scalable, and if everybody would do that, newspapers would be filled out of these hashes. Nobody would buy it anymore, and then the newspaper will die. So what we can do is there is a mathematical technique which is called Merkle tree, where we can aggregate these hashes together and have a top hash over here, which is representing all these hashes which are down here. And this top hash can be published in the newspaper. It means that if you change anything of any of these documents, this will corrupt this top hash, and thus it will not match anymore the newspaper. So now, one thing which is also very important, when we think about distributed ledger, we think, hey, we need to share our data in order to secure them. In a number of cases, you don't want to share the data because they are highly sensitive, highly confidential, highly private, okay? Here, the data will never leave, in fact, my pocket. This text will never leave my pocket. It's only this top hash, which is over here, which will be public over here. But I keep the confidentiality of all the data which needs to be protected. So now, I'm 10 years from now, and I want to prove with the newspaper that indeed I wrote this statement here. The problem is that I don't have anymore all my colleagues who has contributed to this top hash here. This means I'm alone like this. So how do I do? In fact, when I'm time-stamping this means when this Merkle tree is built at the time I want to secure this data, for my data, in fact, I will receive what we call a cryptographic link, or we call it a KSI signature, which is just, in fact, a few hashes, which allows to make the link in 10 years from now between the hash of my document, which is this, and then I can reconstruct this top hash here with the help of this signature over here. This means I can do totally independently from anybody, even from this blockchain or from this infrastructure. I can prove the integrity of this document with this signature that I can receive and store in my pocket, and the newspaper over here. And so we have a system in order to create these hashes, this hash tree, etc., which is privately managed by, in fact, our colleague from Gautheim in Estonia. But through the publication of this top hash here into a newspaper, and thus many copies of this newspaper, the newspaper is acting as the public distributed ledger. So this is a privately managed system, which is publicly exposed through the newspaper. This means that as soon as a hash has been computed, this top hash, and has been published, it's impossible even by the private operator to change anything. The next second, it's frozen there, and it's impossible to change anything. And this is through this publication in the newspaper. You have here a facsimile of the Financial Times of September 18, 2008, where you find this small advertisement here, which is this top hash over here. What is very interesting is that the white paper of Satoshi Nakamoto about Bitcoin was published a few weeks after this. This means this blockchain was already in operation as the first pilot to secure Estonia digital state before even Bitcoin was born. Okay, this is a paradox. It's not known, but it is born before, and it's based upon quite a different kind of concept, but it does the same job. And in fact, this publication since 2008, every month, every 15 or 1 or 2 days after the 15th of the month, you will find in the Financial Times, you will find a small ad. This is the one from the 17th of January, where I pass it, but please give it back to me. You have this small advertisement of Gautheim, and with this newspaper, I will be able to prove, regardless of any infrastructure, a few timestamping that I will show you in a few minutes afterwards. So this means this system has a number of characteristics, meaning that they are absolutely agnostic to any application. This is acting as a trust anchor. Okay? This is not like a number of distributed ledger, typically Bitcoin. This is a ledger which says, hey, you have a few Bitcoin, they have a few Bitcoin, I have maybe a few Bitcoin, I don't, but it's an accounting book. Here, there is no data into this. It's just 1 hash per second for the whole world, which is acting as a trust anchor, and thus it's agnostic to any application. There is no data sharing. This means the data are never leaving my premises, my servers. I share with whoever I want, but I don't need to share them to secure them. There is a full scalability. Bitcoin blockchain, this is 3-4 transactions per second for the whole world. Okay? Here, we have 10 to the power 12, 1,000 billion transactions per second possibly. So we have some room for some space here. And every single second, I can secure data. I don't need to wait for 1 hour or more to have the proof. 1 second later, I have the proof into my pocket, and nobody can change it anymore. We have this public trust anchor, which is the newspaper, which is circulating here. We don't need to consume electricity for a consensus algorithm. The Bitcoin is consuming as much energy as the Netherlands, the whole country of Netherlands. This is huge. Okay, here, all the computers would fit in this room for the whole world. Okay, no cryptocurrency, quantum proof. This is very important when we think about nuclear stuff, because this is very long term. Here, we don't depend upon cryptography, which will be vulnerable upon quantum computers when they will come in 5, 10, 15, 30 years. Fully interoperable, running 24/7 without any breach, without any downtime, every single second since 2008, and thus available for whoever, for whatever application over here. So let's be practical and show now the kind of application we can have with that. We will start by data integrity and provenance. This is the view from my office. We have big construction here, which will be a center for digital trust, so to host companies linked to trust economy over here. And imagine that this is a nuclear power plant or whatever, and when you make regular pictures, you can then check that they put it enough rebars there in the right way here. So this can serve as a proof. And you want to guarantee that this picture is indisputable, because, of course, if you say afterwards, hey, but did you do that, etc., it should be indisputable that this picture has been taken at the right moment and that it has a certified provenance. This is a certified authority who has made this picture, and nobody can dispute it. And the idea is that I will show you that I can guarantee the integrity of this document through a timestamp on this KSI blockchain, and I can guarantee that this is a given person, in this case me, who has signed this picture in an undisputable way. And so I will show you these proofs in a minute. And then the idea is that I made a counterfeit of this picture. This is the same picture, but I wanted to claim that, hey, we did already some work that was not there. So I superimposed something. So this is a counterfeit picture, okay? And the idea will be to see that, of course, none of these proofs will work anymore with this counterfeited picture over here. So let's do it live now to show you that. So for that, I have here the picture that I just, no, sorry, I took the wrong file. The picture that I just showed you here. I have the counterfeited picture where I changed this part here. And I have the signatures and the proof. And here I have a website which is totally public. This means, and the software to check the proofs are totally public domains here, where I will take the picture and the timestamp. This means this proof on the KSI blockchain. I just drag and drop them here, and it says everything is valid. The signature is valid. It matches this picture, and we can see the detail of it. I will go quite fast, so I will not show the details for the moment. And I can show here that this has been well signed by myself. And it says that this signature is valid, that this is well the public key of Philippe, and I can offline afterwards prove you that it's really my public key with my identity which is behind that, and that this is well this picture which has been signed over here. Now, if I take the counterfeited document and I want to match the signature, then I drag and drop, and it says verification failed because the signature is valid, but it's not matching this document. Okay, so it's like if you have a 2-page contract with the signature of the second page and you substituted the first one by something else. Okay, and I can also do that with the signature here, and it will show that it has failed over here. And I could do this kind of checks offline. Here I was on a website, okay, which is going towards this trust anchor, this blockchain, this trust anchor, to make sure that the link between my signatures and this trust anchor was good. But if I would be offline, in fact, I could do it, I will not have time to do it, with a programmed Excel sheet and the version of the newspaper which is circulating there. This means to make the link between my document and this publication which is here, there. So this is a totally different ways of thinking of blockchain, because if you think about whatever blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever else, if you want to verify something, you need to have access to the ledger. This means to the database of all these timestamps. And if we are thinking about long term, who could guarantee that in 20, 30 years from now, Bitcoin will be still live? Maybe there will be some other which will take over and Bitcoin will just disappear a little bit. If you want to check your timestamp in 30 years from now on the Bitcoin or Ethereum blockchain, you need to make sure that the copy that you have where you will look at your timestamp is the real one, is the live one. Today it's very easy because everybody has it. But in 30 years from now, we have no idea. Okay? And thus, you could have somebody who claims that this is the right one, but he has corrupted it by having rewritten almost all of it. It's very easy and it's very quick there. So this means here, the long-term verifiability, this is what is circulating here. This is the newspaper. Okay? And as long as the cryptography is, it cannot be broken, it's indisputable over here. Now, as you said, this is Monday after Super Bowl. And in fact, I did predict on Friday the result of the game. Okay? And I did predict who would win and by how many points. How many points was the difference between the winner and the... Okay? 20, 31. 11 points for the Chiefs. Okay? This was my prediction. The Chiefs did win by 11 points. Okay? And I will be able to prove it to you. Okay? I will be able to prove that I did this prediction. It's coming. This prediction here. Okay? I put that into a PDF file. All right? And I will prove that this PDF file was timestamped Friday before the game. Okay? Let's go. We'll come back to that. There's at least one person following. That's good. Congratulations. So, let's do that. So, the signature is valid. This is this file which has been signed. And if I look, Friday, January 31st at 2 p.m. Okay, so I did this prediction before the game. This is the proof, okay, over here. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit later. You spoiled it in one way or another. In fact, what did I do? And this is, in fact, here I'm proving the digital integrity of this document. This document is real. I did timestamp it before the game. There is absolutely no question about it, okay? But as you said, what I did timestamp 100 of them. All the possibilities until a difference of 50. Fortunately, they did not make more than 50 points difference. The last one I said above 50, that's it. So this means what? And we'll come, this goes to my second illustration about traceability and process integrity. To timestamp something in the blockchain, this is not enough, depending on what you want to prove. This means here, I would need to prove that I did put only one prediction before the game and not several, okay? And not 100 prediction as that. So we'll come to that in a minute here. So let's continue. I wanted to show you this a little bit later, but you you made it a little bit earlier. So now, traceability. This is something which is very important in your domain. How to trace a number of things, to trace the fuel, to trace the events, to trace, and here I was thinking about incident management. A plant has to report incident and to say, hey, a small thing did go wrong. Okay, we are logging that, but maybe this small thing could become a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and you want to be sure that everybody is logging everything and that you don't want to erase the traces at some point. And so I will show you my phone, which is there, because I will just capture a picture of us here, and for that I will just log in. In this case, this is as this is a demo thing, it's a very easy thing. So I will say there is an incident at Stimson. And I will, in fact, take a picture of us. I will erase it later on, so don't worry. But just so that you are sure that it's you, okay? I will not keep it. And now I will show, in fact, here a dashboard where we will see appearing this record in 1 second. So let's go back with my phone. So I will say OK, and I submit. Yes, I will say live. I submit it, and it takes a while because the picture has. And now we have an additional line here. You see Stimson, and there is here the text live that I just mentioned, and the picture, which is, in fact, which has been stored on this database. This is a centralized database. This is not a distributed database. This would be a database hosted by whoever is in charge of collecting incident, for instance. But now it has a corresponding proof. This is the proof on the blockchain that we have seen before. And we can see where was this picture taken, and this is where we are right now in your building over here, okay? All that is now timestamped. And let's say that now, for some reason, we want to hide this or to say this happened somewhere else. And so let's say that we will say that this picture has not been taken here, but at the North Pole. Okay. So I have hacked here as a system administrator or as a hacker. I have just hacked the location where we are. This means if I'm clicking on this now, and I should probably, no, in fact, sorry, on the equator. Yeah, it should be 90. It's on the equator. Okay, so we are in Ecuador. So this is a nice place to meet here. So I just hacked it, okay? But now if I check the proof, wow, you see directly that something went wrong. This means the data are not, you should not trust anymore this data over here, okay? Fine. Now, about process integrity. This is something which is important. I did yesterday. I had some time, so I did some sightseeing, and you will see what I did. I started near my hotel. Then I went to a first museum to see some violin from Stradivarius. Then I went on the mall. Then on the National Gallery to see some nice paintings. Then on the modern part of the National Gallery, I went to the Air and Space Museum. And finally, I finished in the Washington Monument. Okay, so I did all this tour. And I did timestamp all these pictures. Okay, so in fact, all these pictures are timestamped here. This means that if I take the ID DC, oh, I could do that, I think. Okay, the filter does not work, but this does not matter. You see, all these are the pictures there. But so this is my incident reporting. One thing in your domain is that a nuclear power plant, they need to log the incident, but they don't want that all their competitors know that, hey, something went wrong, etc. So typically, if I take this picture and say, hey, I want to see it, I'm a competitor, I want to see it, first, it's encrypted. But second, if I want to download, it will log the fact that the person who was logged has downloaded this picture. And let's see it. So this was this Vermeer painting, okay? And it means that if I look now at the access history, these are the time at which these pictures, and so this was yesterday. Here in this case, this is super user, but because this is a simple demo. But you know who has access to which data. So first you have the access rights, this is fine. But here you have who accessed this data. But most important, you have the proof on the blockchain of this log. And this cannot be erased, because if this is erased, then it will be visible right away, because the proofs, the links of the proofs will be broken. Okay? So this means it's not because this is on blockchain that this could not be kept private. It's not the blockchain which is keeping it private. It is the way you handle it with additional features that makes it private over here. So so now I wanted to say you don't need to have only data integrity, but you need to have process integrity in order to prevent this 100 prediction I did for the Super Bowl. Okay? So what should we do? In fact, here I have a very simple process where I need to go from step 1 to step 2, then 3 I have 2 options, and then to go to step 4 and 5. And the idea is that to put timestamp on each of these stages is not enough. You need to have a link between them so that if you have a positive proof at step 5, you have the guarantee and you can prove that you went either that way or that way here. And it means that if someone would like, either a hacker or somebody who does not want to respect the rule, to jump to this one, then it will be impossible. It will turn red over here, okay? And you want that if somebody is hacking any of the data in the middle, every proof further will turn red there. So let's see how this can be viewed over here. You see here all the proofs, except the first one that I hacked, but all the proofs of my journey yesterday are positive, are green. And now I'm going to hack, and now we will say that this picture, I will take this one in the middle, I will put now 90 degrees, so we will go really in the North Pole over here. So this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think this is this one. We'll see whether. So the North Pole is big. So we don't find it, okay, believe me, but we are not anymore on the mall or wherever it should be. But what is interesting is I have corrupted this one, okay? But now we have applied what we call process integrity. This means we are guaranteeing not only each one, but that we have gone through all these stages, and that it's impossible to corrupt one without corrupting all the rest here. So if I click on check now, you see, oh, in fact, it's in the reverse order. This was the oldest, and these are the newest. From this one that I hacked, they are all looking red, okay? Because you should not believe the rest, because one was hacked before, okay? And now let's say that I want to put a new, in my journey, I want to put a new data on this incident management thing. So I will now report it as my DC journey, and I will take, I will not take a picture, I will just say whatever. I submit, and what will happen? In fact, if something went wrong, if I want to add a new layer, it says error, because the process integrity prevents me to go further into a process which is not, where all the proofs upstream are not the right one. Okay, so this is something which is really important, the process integrity, to guarantee that you can prove that everything was done according to the process that you have decided to have. Okay, it's not me, it's not the blockchain. It's in whatever system, then one can guarantee that the process has been well applied. And the idea is that when we present that to some people, and especially in government, they say, yes, but our application is so sensitive that we don't want that someone is going into it to put these hooks over here. But in fact, it's designed in a way that we will not touch the application of whoever it is. Let's say I'm taking often the metaphor of a metro system. And a metro system it has traffic lights, it has the pass switches there, so they are very complicated softwares to handle that. And I don't want to go into this software and have the risk of that something goes wrong and then there is an accident. But let's say I would like to give the opportunity to the Metro Authority to tell that all my trains were on time. How would I do it? I would just put cameras at given places and record at which time they are passing through. And this camera system will be totally independent from the switch, from the lights, etc. This means there is absolutely no risk, but it will allow to prove that everything was okay. Okay. So here is the same. We can put what we call API calls. This means software calls which are done by the owner of this software, which will link to our process integrity engine and provide this type of proof. So this is something which allows to be done without any interaction with or changing the core software itself. And then each of these proofs, we will have, if I have the whatever happened in my process plus the proof, I can demonstrate when I verify it on a generic verifier that here it went well through step 1, step 2, 3B1, 3B2. So this means it went this way over here and then down here. So I have really all the proofs here in a totally undisputable way, and this can be checked in a generic way here. So my last example is about secure certificate. A lot of time you need to prove something to a community, and you don't want that these people are going to whatever database. If you take the lift, I did not look here, or if you go to a bar, you have a certificate that this lift has been inspected or that this bar has a valid license to sell alcohol, for instance. Okay? And this could be counterfeited in one way or another. All right? Here we have a way, either as a piece of paper or digital, to make sure that it's absolutely unforgeable. Here I created an inspection certificate by this nuclear safety agency for this given power plant, just saying that this safety valve has been inspected and there are some subcritical cracks of 2 millimeters, but this is still okay. I'm a metallurgist by training, so I like cracks. And there are cracks in all nuclear power plants, in all airplanes. There are a lot of cracks, but they are subcritical, so you can be safe. And in fact, here, the content of this certificate, which can be printed at home, which can be kept as a piece of data here in my computer, is secured by this QR code here that I can check through a simple smartphone, and where the data, in fact, are not encrypted. And this is what is very interesting. And I will show it on my phone over here. If I take a standard QR code scanner, so you see, this is really, I do it live. What I see here is that you may not see it well, but this is exactly the same text here that you see over here. Believe me, this is plain text. This is not encrypted, no encryption key to manage, etc. But, in fact, on top of it, right here, you have a cryptographic link with the blockchain. Okay? And now, if I'm using an app which will be open source, it's not yet, but it will be open source, to check that, to check the integrity of this link with the blockchain here, and this app being open source, everybody can build it themselves. You should never believe me if I say, hey, here it has checked the cryptographic link with the blockchain, because it's my app. But if you would take yours and program it yourself, then you would be able to make sure that indeed this is a positive link with the blockchain. This means that the content here, which is exactly the same than I have here, is indeed genuine. And now, of course, I don't like too much this report, because it reports some cracks, and I even to inspect in 6 months instead of 1 year. So I will try to fake it. And so if now I'm taking again my QR code scanner, standard QR code scanner over here, what I see is, oh, sorry, you don't have any more. What I see is that here it says none and good for operation and inspection in 12 months and not 6 months. Okay, so I prefer this one. But now let's use my app over here and see what's going on. It's automatically seeing that the link with the blockchain is broken, and thus this is a forged document. Okay. So with this is something that can be applicable to all kind of things, to university degrees, to digital identity, oh, sorry, you did not see it's forged. So, I will do it again, because you should not believe me. Yes. So I said it can be for university degrees, it can be for digital identity, it could be for an access to a nuclear power plant for maintenance, for instance. You can deliver an identity which contains my biometrics, for instance, and to say that I am allowed, if they check my biometry, to enter into this place, that place today and until 2 p.m. and not later, for instance. And this can be delivered by email to the person in charge. It's impossible to forge because it's cryptographically linked with the blockchain itself. And so I reached the end of what I wanted to present to you. And as a conclusion, things are real. This means this blockchain is used in an industrial way since 10 years. Okay, and it's just to apply it to whatever use case we could imagine to have together in your domain or in other domains. Okay.
So if I could ask a couple of questions first before turning it over to the floor. Am I being heard? One of the questions that we get a lot in the nuclear space is how do you link the digital with the physical? So for the nuclear space, of course, nuclear material moves. It's also fungible, so it shifts from yellow cake powders to fuel rods eventually, underground. So how do you make that link to be able to show integrity throughout with movements?
Okay, that's a question that at SICPA we are at the heart of that because we are coming from material security and thus material marking through banknotes. Banknotes is secure because we put some security inks on top of it, and so when here what I showed you is the digital twin, the digital part of a nuclear fuel, about an event, about a part which has been inspected. And so before answering about nuclear fuel, I will say that if you think about my certificate that I just showed you about the valve number 5, the valve number 5 may have a serial number. You could say, okay, I can erase it, etc. As a metallurgist, I can tell you that even if you erase it, you can see the metallurgy, you can see it behind. But you can have several ways of marking it in a way that it's very difficult to counterfeit. And one thing is to say, hey, this part is in the nuclear power plant at this location, and this is valve number 5, etc. It's very difficult to change it. So in another context, I was talking about a badge, a pass to enter into a given location, into a critical zone. In fact, this QR code, you can copy it freely. It's no problem. In fact, in this case, if it's a badge, it will contain my biometry. And so I am the anti-copy. This means that only me can use it, because if you measure my biometry, it will match. If you measure your biometry, my badge will not match you. Okay? So now, going to nuclear fuels. Before nuclear fuels, I will say we are marking gold ingots, okay, to make sure that these are not blood gold, etc. And for that, we are really putting a mark with security inks, where you can remove it, of course, but you want to keep it to prove that this is indeed genuine, and it has a unique code on it. And it's impossible to remove it and put it on another one. This is the most important one. It's an anti-copy. So for nuclear fuels, first, they are usually in containers, etc. So you can put some marks which are impossible to fake or to remove and put on somewhere else on the fuel. You have also intrinsic fingerprint. This means you know that this nuclear material is coming from this source and not from another one. So you have some chemical elements, trace elements, which allows you to make sure that this is the right one. And then you can make a mass balance. This means that through all the certificates saying, okay, I had so much coming in, so much coming out, so much transformed from this to that, etc., you can have a full traceability granting that you have the mass balance of your fuel. So again, there are several possibilities, and it all depends on the kind of things. And last thing, which is very difficult in our domain, is for food to mark. We cannot mark a batch of wheat, a big cargo of wheat. We cannot mark it because, of course, food safety will never allow it. And so this is a little bit more difficult there. But there are a lot of cases where there are possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Also, there's quite a few cases now with Estonia. I think one of the, and I think it was healthcare first that was started, and then others built from there. And I think that case is incredibly important to showcase how a country that was hacked went more digital. And actually became more secured in the process. And also highlighting that the private blockchain, the private DLT platform, is actually the first one. It was almost a competition, even though no one knew it, who would be first. Bitcoin is the world's first open blockchain, and Guardtime is the first, I would say, DLT platform that was put into place. particularly with guard time KSI, how does acceptability and adoptability go? We have a report, I might as well do the plug, from a workshop that we did in June looking at member state acceptability for DLT for safeguards. And what we learned was that, when we first do a kind of a survey of what people think about DLT, and then we talk about it for a day and a half, and then at the end of it, if they think it would actually work for safeguards information management, and it went to 100% yes after knowledge. But of course, there's still lots of things along the way. But what's been the experience when it comes to KSI platform?
Okay, so first you made about a statement about Estonia, saying it's interesting to see how blockchain allowed the country to go digital. But in fact, it was the reverse. They decided in 91 to go digital because they had no more administration because the Russians just left. And they were hacked, and they were thinking, we have to protect. And this is where blockchain came to protect what they had already, which was a lot of being digital. Now you mentioned the healthcare, and so a first way of answering your question about adoption is to be confident, to have trust that this solution is not putting me in jeopardy about my data or about whatever else. And typically, if I connect with my e-residency card in Estonia, so I have a digital identity, if I connect to my account, I will be able to see who had access to my data. My medical record, I have none, but my other record, I have not many. And in fact, I see nobody has. Why? Because the law is saying if you do, you will be fined, maybe even going in jail, okay? And we will detect it for sure because it's impossible to erase the traces because it's secured on the blockchain, okay? This means that the blockchain is giving the confidence that, hey, it is protecting this or that, my medical data, the nuclear data, or whatever data it is, because it's just mathematics. And so it's mainly a question of explaining what it means, explaining what it is not, typically the different hype around blockchain, about Bitcoin, where, okay, Bitcoin is dead, here it's something different. So if we explain it, and we have it can go up to the cryptographers or the cybersecurity people to say, hey, I am confident that yes, we can use it for our purpose. And now, this KSI blockchain, as I mentioned, is privately operated. This means it's operated by Gartime, but as it's publicly exposed, the proof, when I took the picture of us, the next second I received on my phone this indisputable proof of integrity of this document. Okay, I don't need anybody else, I need just this. And it means that the only problem with a privately operated system by Gartime is that they can decide to switch off the plug, okay, and thus to say it's not anymore available for the future, but all the proofs from this last second can be verified by anybody and can be verified with the newspaper. So what did the US government and the US military do? In fact, the KSI blockchain I showed you is securing your F-35 fighters. Okay? This means all the supply chain, hardware, software, data transmission, everything is time-stamped with this KSI blockchain. But they did not want, for obvious reason, to say, hey, this is secured through an infrastructure which is operated by Gartime. And so the CEO could decide one day, hey, I switch off. So they said, okay, let's make a copy-paste of this infrastructure, which is fully operated at Lockheed Martin by the US military. Okay? And thus, they are totally confident that everything is okay and nobody can do anything bad because it's fully under the control. So again, depending on the use case, the adoption at the end could be 100% because depending on who, you can provide them with the right solution that will fit their need.
I have a feeling there's going to be some questions from the room. We do have microphones. Make sure that you speak into them, and then just mention who you are, and then your question or comment.
Yes, my name is Roger Cochetti, and I have two questions that I'm sure you've covered, but it didn't quite sink in, because obviously any adversary is going to look for the weakest link in the chain. And if you put very strong doors on your house, they're going to look at the windows. And it strikes me that there are two places I'm sure you've thought about, but it's not clear to me how you protect. First of all, why wouldn't an adversary take hostages of all of the families of guard time, management or engineers, and cause them to interrupt the chain? Could that not happen? And secondly, all of this obviously rests on the integrity of the native document itself. So if I can, through brute force or trickery or whatever means, get access to the server that contains the native document, and the example I thought you gave was an interesting one, a bar of gold. Obviously you've stamped that bar of gold with something, but all I have to do is find out who invented the stamp and cause that person to tell me how to modify it so that I could put that stamp onto a bar of lead and trick the entire system. Works. It's simply that the native document has been modified using the people who knew how to create the stamps themselves. So all of this rests on people breaking down the doors where you've strengthened the doors. What about those people who try to break in through the windows? Thank you.
Okay. So about your first question, even if you would put a gun over the heads of the people in charge of this KSI blockchain, it's impossible to change a proof or a timestamp which has been already done even 1 second before. It's impossible, because it's just mathematics, and and even more when it has been published into the newspaper, okay? You have absolutely no way. So this means privately operated, publicly exposed. The publicly exposed makes such that even if you put a gun under my head, I cannot do, not me, but the others, the ones in charge, cannot do anything. So that the only thing they could do is switch it off. But what is the interest of the gangsters to say, hey, switch it off? If it's the F-35 fighters, this is another story, because then, hey, they are flying, and but this is why, this is the US military who has said, okay, we want to have our copy, and the way they are protecting it as well as the rest of their military infrastructure, okay? So that's the first point, is that it's impossible to fake. But I will give you an example even on, on private blockchains, privately operated blockchain. There is one consortium which is called R3, which is the consortium of the main banks around the world, okay, which are making a private distributed ledger to operate their back office, so interbanking transactions. And they need, of course, to have a consensus between them to first define the rule, and second, accept each of the transaction. And you could say, okay, this is very difficult for them or it's impossible to change the past, etc. But let's imagine that a government, maybe this one, would say to the banks, look, we want that you censor, or maybe you even reverse transaction coming from some country we don't like. The bank will say, no, we cannot touch anything, this is, we cannot do, etc. And the US government will say, you did not understand us. Do it. You remember the Swiss banks in the past about the secret etc. they had to open up. Otherwise, they would lose their trading license in US, which would mean they would die. Okay? So it means that they could change the rule, rewind the tape, and rewrite it in the way that some would like to be written. Okay? Whereas there, on this KSI blockchain, it's impossible to rewind the tape. Full stop. Okay? So this was your first question. Your second was about the gold, the stamps on the gold.
Or even the pictures that resides in your iPhone.
Yes. So okay.
If I have your iPhone, can I devise a way to modify that picture so that even the linkage is accurate, but it links, but the native
Yes.
material or document
So if you hack my phone and you change the picture, you cannot recreate a proof from 1 hour ago, because it should be, or for yes, 1 hour ago, that will be a valid proof. So this means, I will take the example of a bank, okay? When you do an e-banking transaction, I don't know in your country, in my country, when I do an e-banking transaction, I want a receipt, I click receipt, it's a PDF file. I can counterfeit it in 5 minutes and then show it to my tennis club to say that I paid my, my fee, and they should not believe it. They should believe only when the money is coming in, okay? So the question is, I don't have a digital receipt that I can prove mathematically to everyone that it's indeed genuine. But then, okay, and this stamp, this KSI stamp, would be a digital receipt that I can show to anybody with a copy of the transaction signed by the bank and say, as I did for my construction work picture, here it is genuine and you know that it has been signed by this one or that one. The thing is, the bank will make such that they will not lose the data. So the picture that is very precious, etc., I will make such that I will not lose it, as well as the bank will not lose my data. So this is this is an IT problem. This is not an integrity problem. You understand? But you have then, next to each data, you have the proof that you can use if it's necessary. But the rest is IT. Does it answer?
Yeah, but it points to what the bad guy would try to go for. It just simply points to what the bad guy would try to go for, which is if I can control the bank, then I can control their database and I can modify the transaction you described so that the native database contains what I want, not what you want. Now you have a receipt that you can show that's different from what the bank says, but the bank says you didn't pay your tennis club, and you have a receipt that shows you did pay your tennis club. Who are you going to believe, the bank's database or your fake receipt?
My receipt will not be fake. My receipt will be
I know
fully
it's not
original.
gonna be fake.
And
They
this
will
is
say
the
it's
thing.
fake.
If I need to go to a judge, I will show my receipt with the timestamp on the KSI blockchain, mathematically proven, and I will tell the bank, now prove the same. Prove your transaction with the receipt and maybe with my signature, because in a bank there is always two signatures, my signature, their signature. So I could have something where I can prove my signature, their signature, the timestamp. And then you mentioned the gold, etc. We are doing security inks for banknotes. You could not imagine how these inks are protected when they are transported to the plants, etc. They are much more protected than any money transfer or any gold transfer, because its value is much more, because this could compromise the whole currency if it would be stolen or whatever.
There's a question here.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So Rusty Wrench, I'm with the Aerospace Industries Association. So we're looking at creating a consortium for distributed ledger technology, and we see that in order for it to work, that we have to have what we call a minimum viable ecosystem. We have to have enough, the whole stakeholders that accept and adopt the business processes and business rules that we create to use distributed ledger technology. But I see this from a lot of pushback from our suppliers to adopt or at least embrace the fact that we're going in this direction. Do you have any experience on how you managed adoption of your whole supply chain in order for it to work?
That's a very interesting question. in terms that blockchain technology is a way, especially in supply chain, but in other fields also, to improve transparency. Transparency does not mean that everything should be visible, but it could be viewed by whoever is in charge, okay, who is able to. And so some people don't want that what they do is maybe sometimes a little bit outside of the rule, or it's easy to backdate a contract for some good reasons, or in quotes, etc. So this means that there could be some reluctance. And the other thing is that if you want to have traceability, you have also to record some transaction. You have to scan some goods. You have to enter some data, etc. So this is more painful than not doing anything. And so in supply chain especially, there should be either a carrot, an incentive, because it allows to save money by having less paper, quicker validation of documents, etc., or a stick, which would be a regulation or fines, etc. If you don't have neither or one of the two, then indeed this could be very difficult to have the adoption, because this is mankind. So it's related to people, not technology. Okay?
For us, I'm going to do Aaron, and then I'll move over to this side. But for us, one of the things is, I talk about how the nuclear field is one of the most disruptive technologies, which means it does not want to be disrupted. So it's an incredibly conservative sector. And I think in many respects there could be some linkages with yours. What we find is that education, and including for us as we're going through what this potential means. One of the questions we get also, because it'd be easier, it would help the case if we could say, this is how much money it's going to save you. But we can't do that in the nuclear space because we're just beginning very small prototype testing. And it's really the testing that's going to start to open eyes up in the ways that this could actually have an impact. So it's a slow road. I'd be happy to talk to you after. Maybe there's some way.
But maybe I could add one thing, because you mentioned, of course, the fact that you have to put together a number of actors. But most of the time in blockchain, when we think about blockchain, one thing, hey, but we have to build a consortium to build a new blockchain. And, what does it mean? I will need to be in charge of this and that, etc. And if you are using the blockchain only as a trust anchor, okay, then you don't need to build a new one. There is one available for the whole world, which has all the capability, and which is the most secured and the most proven in the past. So again, it means that the entry cost to enter into that, to do very simple things to start with, just to timestamp a few information. I would not say, because my business colleagues will kill me, but it's very cheap in terms that you don't build. It's like if you say, I have a road system, and now, I need to transport some new type of goods. We need to build a new road system on top of the others. No, you just rent a car, load it, pay the toll, and go. So the road is existing. This KSI infrastructure is existing already. You just need to start, and one can start very small, and then grow. So there is no upfront investment. This is the very, very important there.
Aaron?
So Erin Clements here at the Stimson Center. One word or concept that keeps coming up both in your presentation and in the questions we've had so far is trust. And you just, again, we're speaking about that public trust anchor. I'm curious if you could speak to sort of how the Financial Times specifically was chosen, and also to, as you said earlier, we don't know what things are going to look like in 30 years. We don't know the future of newspapers, and especially in today's climate, you see a lot of doubt being sown among the public within media and newspapers. And I can hypothetically imagine a day where people would no longer see a particular newspaper as that trusted source. So has any thought been put into sort of what it would look like to transition to a new public trust anchor, or just as times change, what does that process look like?
Okay, I don't know how they selected the Financial Times. They wanted to have a widely spread newspaper. But in fact, it's also published into an Estonian newspaper that probably nobody knows about. So this is more local. This is also published on the Bitcoin blockchain, just for fun. And this is also on Twitter. But I would say Twitter is more for convenience purposes, but it could be changed or erased or whatever. And again, as you said, we don't know the future of newspaper. Maybe in the future it will be engraved in the front side of the Parthenon in Athens, or in the pyramids. In a place. We will see that what is important is we were discussing that 2 weeks ago at the OECD, where I am one of their advisors for blockchain policies, where they talked about sunsetting. What about if an infrastructure is disappearing? And typically, if this blockchain infrastructure, this KSI blockchain infrastructure is disappearing, the newspaper will still stay. And if newspaper are not anymore the right thing, something else will be found, and it could be again engraved in several places around the world if it's needed. So, but what is important is that what we do today has a long-term life. There.
I'm Les Aker. I'm a computer scientist. I spent the better part of my career doing cryptography and doing cryptographic systems for the government and things. So I'll just say broadly that his cryptography is sound, and that it's very close to the method that we use right now to protect electronic key material that we generate inside the government to control very sensitive communication, as in, will the B-2 bomber drop the bomb or not? Will it be deployed? And back to your question, it's not so much a question of whether or not somebody can move the stamp on the gold, it's whether you trust the person who's creating the gold and then putting the stamp on, which in this case is normally called an oracle, or someone who you trust. So Lockheed's biggest problem is not that they can't track a carburetor or a radar unit, is that somebody that they trusted as a subcontractor lied to them and picked up the part and put the wrong part in, and it got into the system, and now it's being tracked, and now it's there. But so it's not as much of a window and door problem as it is a problem with, do you trust someone who you have built in? And he has fixed part of that because he has a private system. If we run Bitcoin, we run Ethereum, we trust the fact that 51% of the people in the network are not bad actors. Because if more than half the people are bad actors, consensus will be, if your friends jump off a cliff, you'll jump off a cliff too. And in this case, all of his actors are known quantities to him who are inside, that at some level he knows their identity, he knows he's going to trust them, he's exchanged some keys with them. And so long as a majority of those people do not become bad actors, we've distributed the key to everybody in the room. And if more than half of us or 75% of us suddenly take the bribe, yeah, then we have a problem. But we are relying on the fact that the majority of the people that we have trusted to come into the system are not bad actors. And as long as we can hold to that, he has a very secure system working. That's not really a question.
No,
but
thank you.
But I saw that across a whole bunch of the things. And I'll just say, I've been making cryptographic boxes for a long time. Some of them have now gracefully been retired to the Smithsonian. But the key background of how he is doing the stamp and the key and the verification is cryptographically sound.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind just passing the microphone.
If I may do a remark on that, with such a solution, you know who is in charge. You know who to call if something goes wrong. And in fact, in the slide that I showed about from the Estonian government, where they had the different point of view about this KSI blockchain, One is it's an SLA-backed system. This means it's a system that is granted by people that you know who they are. Okay, and this is all the discussion about public blockchains, where if something goes wrong, you have nobody to call and you have just to cry. Although some can be quite safe, but again, for a government, to my point of view, this is something which is difficult. And when we think about digital identity, there are some other trends where, hey, we should have a fully public blockchain for that, etc. But if something goes wrong, this is a little bit difficult.
Please.
Yeah, Josh Foster from the American Society of Adaptation Professionals. You asked the perfect question. I've been to blockchain events where they talked about this garbage in, garbage out, that if you can't trust the origin, it's a problem. For example, turning lead in, you could have a whole system that turns lead into gold, for example. But one solution I've heard, I'm not an expert on blockchain, but there's an MIT professor that's working on kind of a cloud verification so that each time you try to verify it goes to, I think, multiple chains, and it basically randomly chooses in the crowd which ones to use as verification. Each one's sound, everybody's agreed. But for example, it might be randomly choosing folks who are bad versus good actors. So it might choose all the good actors, or some good and some bad, but it creates the verification by sort of a random of a bunch of chains rather than looking at a single chain.
That sounds like a public blockchain, not a private.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
No,
It's an attempt to scale public.
There are plenty of solutions, but they become very complicated to handle. And where protocol may change because part of the community said propose to change this, change that, etc. And when sometimes you read some announcement, okay, this organization coupled with that one to use this protocol because it will cure this one using open source coming from that place, etc. If you are in government, maybe a few specialists could just analyze every line, etc., and say, okay, fine, I put my stamp. But this becomes very complicated. When you audit this protocol of the KSI blockchain, it's so simple. And this makes it very elegant, but also very safe because it's very simple. And the simplest solution are usually the most efficient one.
I have a couple of questions. I'm Tom Cochran, and I'm a retired physicist. Suppose in your tour around D.C., instead of stopping at the museum, you loaded some child pornography, and then was sued, and the judge orders you to remove it. Can you?
Yes. Yes, because this is, when we think about blockchain, we say it's immutable. It's there forever, okay? So I will take the following example is that if somebody is creating a Bitcoin transaction, and in Bitcoin transaction, you can add a small piece of text, just one sentence, okay? And if this person does not like me and say, hey, Philippe is a criminal, it's written there. It's impossible to remove it. Whoever you are, it's there, it's engraved in stone, it will be replicated in tens of thousands of ledgers. Philippe is a criminal, there, it's impossible. But most of the time, or I would say to my point of view, you should never put an information into a blockchain. You should put what you could do is to put the hash, so the fingerprint of this document or of this statement into the blockchain. And if you would put the hash, so the fingerprint of Philippe is a criminal, okay, only the ones who would know that this is there could check it over here. In what I showed there, no information is going out. This means the information is only staying in the perimeter you decide, either your database, your phone, or something that we could share among us, okay? And thus, if a judge would say, remove it, then we know, and it's very easy to remove it. If I have a child pornography picture on my phone and I'm asked to remove it, I can remove it, that's it. Although it has been timestamped, but not the picture, the hash of the picture, or even the hash of the picture has been timestamped there. So again, when we think about immutability into a blockchain, it's only a very few cases where it's not. And I will give you another example. In Geneva, in Switzerland, they said, oh, we want to perhaps to have e-voting on the blockchain. And some professors said, oh, but no, it's not possible because we have a law in Switzerland saying that 48 hours after the vote, we should destroy all the voting material. It should disappear. Okay, that's it. And so, as it's on blockchain, it's immutable, we cannot. But this was totally wrong because there is no information on blockchain. The blockchain is acting as a trust anchor. Thus, you can delete the whole database with all the electronic votes without any problem. Nothing will stay on the blockchain.
You had one more?
Yes. Is it difficult to train people to use the technology, for example, in the nuclear industry to track nuclear materials? I mean, you're very proficient at this, but this is your profession. So you go outside to an inspector. I guess he doesn't have to learn the whole technology. He just learns how to implement his
So,
small part.
so as I said before, some people say, hey, in a blockchain you need to, I took the analogy with a road system, you need to build a new road system. And let's say a new road system in the mountains with tunnels, bridges, and so on. Wow, it's very, very difficult to do. But what I say is no. You just rent a car, you load it, and you drive. So you see the analogy. You don't need to be a tunnel or a bridge engineer. You need just to have your driver's license. Okay? So and the idea is that the blockchain should be invisible for the users. This means in a nuclear power plant or wherever. It's like, do you care or do you even know HTTP protocols which are behind the usage of internet on your phone? No, you don't care about that. You are using the app on your phone. And the idea is that if it's well done, this is just a new app which has the blockchain on the background. Nothing. So, and again, to implement this, it's any software developer can implement that when again you use something which is existing and you don't try to have the latest protocol, etc.
Stimson, in partnership with the University of New South Wales and the Finnish nuclear regulator STUK, will be launching the world's first nuclear material accountancy prototype, not protocol, on March 10th in Helsinki. So this is our first attempt to show how something can be user-friendly. I mean, we don't want the inspectors to be inspector gadgets as they're out because there's going to be AI, additive manufacturing, all these other things when we're thinking about down the line. So it is making sure that everything is user-friendly, otherwise it will never be accepted. It also goes back to acceptance. There's a question over here.
Yes, I'm Ashley. I'm with the Wisconsin Project on Nuclear Arms Control. My question is more for Cindy. I'm wondering where your vision, where you see this technology being most advantageous within the safeguard system. I can see its application for preventing against nuclear terrorism, and I'm wondering if you can see an application for ascertaining that nuclear material is not being diverted by state actors for clandestine means. And particularly the reason I'm asking is if you think that this is something that could be written into, for example, a bilateral agreement with Iran. If we said one of our provisions is that we want to have this blockchain technology so that we can be certain we can trust but verify.
Right. So SLAFCA, a shared ledger SAFCA. SLAFCA is the prototype that we're developing with Finland and the University of New South Wales. And that is going to demonstrate at least the first little part of feasibility when it comes to using DLT for safeguards information management. There, the reporting mechanisms, there's code 10, there's a specific code that states have to use when reporting, so there is a very clear system already and format, and then for us it's trying to use this technology or demonstrate to see if it's possible how we can use this for safeguards information management. And yes, so far even a smaller prototype that was done 2 years ago shows that diversion is caught right away. So this is where we want to take this further. We're also looking at the potential and what this could mean for nuclear security itself. Nuclear material accountancy and control is where both security and safeguards overlap. But also looking at what you mentioned, the cameras and access controls, and how this can be used in a way for operators, as well as regulators, but for operators to also have a better clarity as to where the material is, who is going in and out, who has access, and if there's been any breaches.
Again, this goes back to the question of trusting the people who are the author of a given data or of a given information, and to the question of garbage in, garbage out. Okay, so this is why I insisted on process integrity. This means to have processes which prevents as much as possible the fact that somebody could feed an information which would not be a right one. And imagine, I have no idea about how these controls are done, typically in Iran, on-site controls, but let's imagine that there is the inspectors of the IAEA, and they are the Iranian officials who are there. They both have private keys, well designed there, and they would take some evidences, could be pictures, could be whatever, and then they would timestamp them and sign them. This means that they both have the way to prove, like my bank receipt signed by myself and the bank cashier, that indeed this was like that. Of course, maybe they did not see that there was some hidden building where they did not have access. But at least for this information, they can prove these things. But then it's a question of people, of political will to do so. The technology is available for that.
Just one other quick comment. Of course, DLT does not remove physical inspection.
Yes.
Right? We'll still need inspectors to go in and verify that there are so many centrifuges and of course, that there is not any undeclared activity if they have signed the additional protocol. One question left. Milton, to you.
Milton Honig, International Center for Terrorism Studies. This is a little more abstract question, but to what degree does quantum computing and its ability to handle vast quantities of data influence the integrity of the blockchain system? Does it influence it at all?
That's a very precise question, and I will talk about under the control of cryptographers. I'm not, but I discussed a lot these type of things with the Estonian cryptographers who have invented all that. Is that to simplify? Is today, if you take a signature with private-public key infrastructure, a signature, today the efforts you need to make, this means the number of computers you need to align to break such a signature, is an exponential function of the length of the signature. This means that if you take a signature which is long enough, you would need 1 million years of today's computer to break it. So even if the computers are 1,000 times more efficient, it will take some time. And you can always double the key, and then it will take 1 billion years. Just I simplify a little bit, forgive me. The thing is, with quantum computers, the paradigm of this exponential behavior will change, and it will be, let's say, linear. This means if it's linear, if you double the key, you double the computer, you double the key, and then it means it will be vulnerable. The cryptography that is used here by this blockchain is based upon these hashes, so these fingerprints that I mentioned before. And these fingerprints, this is the same exponential rule, but with quantum computers, it will remain exponential, an exponential which is a little bit less steep, but it will remain exponential. This means these will not be vulnerable to quantum computers. Okay, so this means that typically almost all the other blockchains are based upon this asymmetric cryptography, which will be vulnerable, not this one. And in fact, I did not talk about it, but the signature that I showed before of my picture is a signature which is a new kind of signature which will also resist to quantum computers. So this means that cryptography is catching up, but it means that current cryptography will need to be changed, and this is something that will be very important for the future, because this is like a Y2K, the 2000 bug. It will come. We don't know. We don't have the date, but it will come. But I'm sure that you may contradict me or complement.
Only if it's 30 seconds. Do you have the mic?
All quantum computers are not created the same. The microcell phone doesn't work like the D wavelength, but he is essentially correct in that the hashes are not near as vulnerable. We know which hashes are resistant to quantum. And think of it this way. If the key or the hash is of significant length, you don't get enough data from the actual document to do a strong cryptanalysis against the hash to try to break it. And that's why if we have a 1K hash like a SHA-3, it's so much stronger than a SHA-256, which is only 256 bits. So we've got the math to fix that. The quantum stuff is still way out there, and everybody sees it as the boogeyman, but we're okay.
Great, thank you. Join me in thanking Philippe for coming by, and to all of you as well. Thank you so much. And also, just quickly, if you're not on our listserv and would like to be, to know about future events, please give Gabby or I one of your business cards. Thank you, Philippe. That's perfect.